you've, like you've said, built businesses, built people, done all this amazing stuff. Where did the original idea to even pursue that journey?
But I knew early on that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think by the time I found what worked for me, I probably started and failed at about 20 businesses.
Wow. Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the HIBI podcast, a podcast where I talk to entrepreneurs and professionals about how they built their careers and businesses, to tease out some of the details around the ideas, the processes, the people, and the platforms that help them achieve the successes that they have. And today, I'm excited to be talking to a distinguished entrepreneur who has built an impressive career in the media and entertainment space, across companies like Sony and his own iRocking and his own company right now, Freeme Digital. Give me a warm welcome to Michael Ugwu. Nice to be having this conversation.
Yeah, man, nice. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So to kind of like put you on the spot right away, what would you consider your biggest or most impactful accomplishment today?
Ooh, yeah, that's right from the top. No warm-ups.
No warm-ups.
I think for me, it's been able, it's having the ability to have an impact on my immediate community, and that's in a professional sense. So I feel that with the businesses I've run, I've been able to employ, pay, train, and empower quite a few young people. I think at various stages of business, I've employed up to 60, 70 people directly, and maybe 200-300 people indirectly. So yeah, I think that when all is said and done, you kind of regardless of the success you achieve in business, financially, professionally, and all those nice metrics, I think that it's the impact you make on other people's lives, because it always has a way of coming back somehow. People remember, oh, I learned this skill from you, or I developed these attributes in your company, and I've been able to go on to do X, Y, Z. And I'm always kind of like proud to see where some of the alumni of the various businesses I've run kind of like end up. So yeah, I mean, I think people. I like impacting people.
Yeah, that's a really dope answer. So the next one then is, you've, like you said, built businesses, built people, done all this amazing stuff. Where did the original idea to even pursue that journey come from?
I was small, man. I was a kid when I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, to be honest. You have this thing where, you look up to your fathers and what have you. And though I didn't really have a great relationship with my dad because he lived in Nigeria and I grew up in the UK, so I was like kind of like distance. I always liked, his lifestyle in terms of he had businesses in the UK at the time, he had a sawmill in Nigeria, he got into politics at the time. He was always doing different things. And he was always, financially able or capable. And I think early on I was like, so I wasn't looking at that straight-laced 9-to-5, kind of like that, putting on a suit and going to the office. And I was kind of like everywhere. To be in Germany one day, Japan the next day, London the next day, Lagos the next day, Abuja the next day, Enugu the next day. And so I kind of like, throughout my younger years, I was like, I always had that in the back of my mind that I want to be an entrepreneur. I think figuring out how to be an entrepreneur was then the difficult part, because you have to first have a good idea, right? That's what you think, like you're going to start a business. You have to have a good idea and you feel everything's been done. But I knew early on that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think by the time I found what worked for me, I probably started and failed at about 20 businesses.
Wow.
But you get to see that's how every entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, has the same story of trying and failing.
Stumbling into success.
Stumbling into success. I think that's the word. I don't know if I like the word stumbling, but you know, I guess it's close enough for this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and I think, you know, one of the things that you say to me that's so insightful is the fact that you started and failed, but in the way that in my estimation, the way I tend to look at it is, it's not really that. It's just like there's so much learning gap,
Sure.
so many of the time that needs to be filled. So, given that, what were some of the resources that you found along the way in terms of knowledge or courses or grants or things like that of that nature that kind of like helped shape you up and line you up for that success that you started to then have?
I mean, school probably didn't do too much. You know, I did my undergraduate, did my master's. You know, so I've been pretty well educated, right? But I think all that I really got from school is that it teaches you how to learn, so you can figure stuff out, right? It helps you refine, I guess, your God-given common sense. You know, being able to research and, you know, look into stuff and double check stuff. But in terms of actually, you know, probably being that rocket fuel, I'd probably say like books more than anything. You know, I've always been a pretty, you know, avid book reader. I think the first book I read that, you know, changed my mindset on, you know, how to kind of like just go about my day to day in this, you know, in trying to become a professional, trying to become an entrepreneur, trying to like be bigger than, you know, what society tells you can be, was a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Right? I probably read that when I was maybe about 21, 22. It was a bit advanced, to be honest. You know, some of the content, I've gone back to that book several times, and as I've grown older, it's made more sense, right? But I think some of the concepts early on to me was, you know, I'll never forget, there was one concept in the book that was particularly of interest in my younger years. Like, you know, when you're younger, you know, as a young boy, right, you toast girls, you chase girls, right? And you put a lot of energy into it. You know, you make sure you're looking good, you make sure you're smelling good, you make sure you pick like a nice restaurant, you make sure you pick someone to go on a nice date. You put a lot into it. You don't just show up anyhow, right? And it was like, you know, transfer that energy that you put into these pursuits, you know, into bettering yourself and moving forward. And then these other things will be attracted to you anyway. So it was just that shift in thinking. It was just like, you know, put your energy to different uses, and what you're actually going for, it'll be easier to get it, right? So early on, you know, there were a lot of concepts in that book, but I mean, that was definitely one of them around energy and around drive. So yeah, man, but I read a lot. I always advise people to read. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's interesting. So speaking on still the idea of resources, one of the biggest resources that you can have is people. So who were the people and partnerships that has helped you achieve success?
I've always been about, you know, the specific team around me, right? You know, I'm actually happy to say that, you know, what like I got it in the paint, right? I hustled hard. There was no one that came and said, "This is how you do it. This is the way forward." You know, I kind of figured it out. So I think that, you know, the people that I would thank more than anything are probably the team that I put around me, right? Because I made sure that my vision was understood. You know, I made sure that I had the right energy, and I made sure I transferred that energy, and I made sure I got back the right energy, right? So in the first instances of building, you know, what went on to become probably one of my most successful businesses, which was Freeme, like, it was getting the energy right. It was, you know, constantly being ready to be the leader. And, you know, I guess from a distance, I was probably looking at where other media entrepreneurs in Nigeria or music executives in Nigeria may have got it wrong, right? And then tried to be like, okay, what if we just try doing it like this instead, right? So maybe they don't know that I was looking and watching them from a distance. Because, you know, that, I guess. And the other thing in Nigeria, why it's hard to get around people to get information, is no one likes to really give away their trade secrets. I don't think we have that culture of sharing information. It's not like the US or, you know, the UK, where failure, you know, is part of the process. And you're happy to share, your failures, your learnings, because it's for the betterment of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you have your guys who are morons, but there's a lot more sharing of information there.
Yeah,
It's different in Nigeria. Because you don't know who are the concept of the village people. You don't know who's coming for you, right?
Yeah.
So I'll definitely say that I definitely owe a lot of thanks to family. They supported me early on, like a lot, throughout all my businesses. And the team who are around me, man, it's like you get the right basketball team around you. It's nice to have a great coach, but put MJ, Rodman, Scottie Pippen on a team. Great coach or not, those guys are going to play ball together.
The rings are coming.
Yeah, understand. You understand.
So, what outlets or channels have helped you express your entrepreneurial energy the most? And this could be a platform, a technology, or an industry.
I definitely think it's been the music industry. Yeah, I've dabbled in different things. Like I said, I've been in multiple spaces. I've been a finance professional. I've been in the commodity space. I've been in the import-export space. I've been in the political space. And when I actually got into the creative sector, I didn't realize how much, how all these failures and skills I've built up over the years, I didn't realize how it would help me express, a lot of my inbuilt creativity. The problem, I think, early on, in African culture, the creative sector is not really seen as, a buoyant sector. For the longest period of time, it wasn't anyway. And I think in the last 10 years, last decade plus, we've made it quite clear as a movement that there's actually something here, right? It's a sector within its own right. It employs a lot of people. It's great for a country like Nigeria that's teeming with a youth population. I think the average age of a Nigerian is about 19 or 20.
Yeah.
Something like that. Right? I think that's why COVID didn't affect us like some other countries like Italy, where they have an older population. So I think, in terms of sector, where I've had the most fun, where I've created the most value, it's the creative sector. And I've invested in movies, I've invested in, a lot of artists' careers. I've created, entertainment infrastructure. So this is like one of, very few studios. It's probably the first, state-of-the-art, purpose-built production studio and soundstage in Lagos. I think prior to that, we had, warehouse-type structures, on the mainland. We didn't have anything on the island. But like this was actually like an integrated building, co-working space, office space, photo studios, green screens, sound stage, breakout rooms, so like a multifaceted business. And I think that, it's gone on to inspire others to do similar things. And I've always felt that we were lacking in entertainment infrastructure. So yeah, I mean, definitely the creative space has allowed me to bring all my skills to the forefront and thrive, man.
That's great. So, what in your temperamental character would you say has helped you the most along this journey?
Diplomacy. I don't know about temperamental. I'm pretty cool. The fact of the matter is, you need to be able to switch it on and off. You have the concept of a peacetime CEO and a wartime CEO, right? Like in Nigeria, you do have to constantly be at battle mode. Because, like you saw outside, there's always something, happening. There's always an issue, whether it's security, water, lights, the cost of diesel, crazy clients, so you have to be prepared for the worst. But I think also my diplomatic temperament helps kind of like quell a lot of the unnecessary, isn't like bubbling under. Because Nigeria is just like that. It's like a powder keg.
Yeah, I know.
Right? You see people fighting, and Nigeria has this thing about brinkmanship. You get to, in the UK, US, if someone may pull out a knife and stab you, in the US, someone may pull out a gun and shoot you. But Nigeria, you shout. And it's usually the person who shouts the most that wins, but it doesn't often always go further.
Yeah.
Right? So it's being able to manage tempers, bringing things down, being the peacemaker. I think that's definitely helped. Especially in working with creatives. Creatives are very emotional, right? And you have to be able to, be the bigger person a lot of the time, be the person that understands the needs of the business, the needs of the project, the need of the kind of like, the team spirit, the teamwork to make sure that you achieve your goals. So I definitely think that's probably been that personal attribute I have that has helped me, the most.
By the way, I caught the peacetime wartime CEO reference from the Hard Thing About Hard
Things. Yeah, man, great book.
Great book, yes. So what role or position or opportunity has given you the chance to do your best work?
Sorry?
What particular, of all the roles that you've had at Sony and IROC and Freeme Digital, many of the other positions that you've been in, which one do you feel personally has given you like the most opportunity to express your creative abilities?
I mean, it's tough to pick, man. I mean, when I brought Sony to West Africa, set up the business, we did a lot of, interesting, groundbreaking things. I mean, signing, Wizkid and Davido, when we signed them, they're still signed to Sony. It was like, it was major, right? Two of the biggest Afrobeat superstars on the continent, now under the same label home, right? Well, one's at Columbia, one's at RCA, but still under the Sony family. But obviously, I think with that, it was a massive team effort. Sony's a big company, so it's a massive team effort. So I think that the stuff that I'm probably most proud of is the stuff I guess that I feel I've done a lot myself. So okay, fine. Again, artists' careers that we've help them break through. It's like amazing seeing an artist go from zero to something. Right, their life changes. They now become, they now have economically viable careers. They become superstars, big boys, and what have you. That's also very interesting to see. But I think, what may become my most impactful, may be the NFT community that I'm building. Because I started acquiring. I got into the crypto space some years ago. And I've become a pretty avid collector of NFT over the years. I have over 900 NFTs now.
Wow.
I was able to get into some pretty amazing projects early, and just transferring some of that knowledge to people in my community that I'm building. I've got a community called Metaphrase, and I just love to see people win. And these are just regular people. I think the difference is like when you're in like the creative industry, you're dealing with superstars or semi-superstars, right? People who have that notion, they want so much more. But when you're just impacting someone who's living a pretty regular life and they feel, the impact of like, making better financial decisions, investing in, the new frontier of digital technology, which is digital assets under the name of NFTs, it's pretty empowering because they go back to their day-to-day lives, their day-to-day jobs, and they're doing something exciting for themselves. So I think that's pretty different, and I think that why I prefer that more is I always say that being in the creative space, it's probably one of the most thankless jobs you'll ever do. You can change careers, help artists build, but because they always want so much more, it's never enough. It's never like, oh, thanks for this. It's hard for that. Yeah. But then, in the NFT space, just onboarding people to the space, getting them to understand how to avoid scams, getting them to invest in, high quality projects, them seeing, making gains, so you're obviously understanding investing and how to obviously move your life forward, because it's something they don't necessarily expect. They're very grateful for, just sharing of knowledge, and then they go on to share knowledge as well. So I think that, right now, that's probably, I think in the next 10 years, we're probably going to talk about the future part, but I think so, yeah.
So what is one of the most difficult challenges that you faced in your career so far, and how did you overcome it?
One of the most difficult challenges. Okay, so I think the gift of being early to like driving forward this Afrobeats movement, especially from a digital perspective. So with iRocking, I developed and ran the first, pretty much the first digital streaming platform, pre-Spotify opening up in Africa, pre-Apple Music opening up in Africa. This is like 2010. let's say, right? That was early. It was probably too early because the platform
because there wasn't even a broadband.
It wasn't broadband. There wasn't payment infrastructure. So PayStack and Flutterwave, they didn't exist. Even if you have a streaming app, and there were still so many apps. It wasn't down to just iOS and Android. You still had to build for Windows, Symbian, BlackBerry, iOS, Android. There were like 6 apps you had to build, so it was unsustainable. In terms of building out for all those apps. Now you just build for 1 or 2. So with that whole kind of like wave of Afrobeats taking over everything. I mean, you're talking about Thames on tracks with Drake and Future now. These things are common, right? So a lot has happened in the music industry, and I think that one of the greatest challenges was being able to deal with so much competition, because at some point, Freeme was probably like one of the only games in town, if not the only game in town, when it came to digital distribution. But at some point after that, it became obvious that something was happening here. Obviously, I was actually part of a major label. After I set up Freeme, I joined Sony to help them, build up in Nigeria and West Africa. But then a wave came of all the major labels. Then after that, it was all of the independent music companies and other international music companies. And then also you had all the local companies being like, oh, there's something going on here a lot. So the industry became very fragmented over the years. So for me, one of the biggest challenges was figuring out where we sat at some point, because we kind of like lost that vision of where we sat in the industry. So about 2 years ago, I moved the business away from, distribution. It's 2-3 years ago now, more towards, label services and actually signing and developing talent. So with distribution, you're almost more like a logistics company, right? So it's more like, you leverage on tech to make sure that you're just delivering artist content. You don't always get involved in the process. You do invest now and again, but it's sometimes arm's length. When you actually have a label and label services, you're actually identifying, signing, developing, growing talent. So when we started that arm of the business up about 2-3 years ago, it was great timing, because we've signed and developed some amazing artists. So one of our current signings now is the current Apple Music Up Next Artist of the Month.
That's
so
huge.
Apple Music, it's huge. Yeah. So Apple have given us a lot of support on that project. Project came out last month called Rare Gem, artist called 90. It's probably done over 2 million streams now. And that's his debut project. Thank you. That's his debut project. We just got a HIBI nomination for an album we put out last year with Basketball called Yabasi.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah,
wow.
We did that. Yeah. Then, we won a HIBI's, with the Cavemen Project Roots that we put out, in 2020. And, we've been able to record some wins over the years. So I think, pivoting the business into more of that focus where we stripped away, the map, because we were that huge logistics business, and we stripped away a lot of that just to focus on specific talent. So that it was challenging at the time, because of the fact that there's just so much going on, and you feel like the younger guys, because music is a young guys game.
It is,
right? See my gray hairs. Yeah, I didn't have these gray hairs when I started, but it's a young guys game. So you always feel that, okay, fine, like I've done my time. I've kind of like tried, but I wasn't ready to throw into the towel personally. I was like, no, we need to re-energize, and it's been dope. It's been a dope process, and that actually meant the hardest part about that was people, because when you gear your business to being a logistics company, you need people who have like attention to detail, analysts, uploaders. You have a specific set of staff, right? When we had a huge, massive, we had about 50, 60, 70 staff here. But when you actually add units to a business and shift and pivot, you need different sets of skill sets. Yes, different skill sets. So we had to hire different hands, right? We had to obviously get more A&R heavy, more marketing heavy. Actually more understanding, being more client facing with services, being more hands on and giving a premium, like what they call it, white glove type service to all of our clients, as opposed to being just that logistics delivery company. So it was challenging, but yeah, it's been very, very interesting and rewarding.
That's great. So finally, given all that you've been able to accomplish so far, what is on the horizon for the next 5 to 10 years, and what is the plan to accomplish?
So, I mean, I've been in the music industry now, I don't know, it's coming up. I was in the music industry informally before I got into the music industry professionally. So I've probably been professionally in the music industry maybe coming to 15 years, right? I'm actually doing a lot in other spaces now. I believe in long-term diversification. You have entrepreneurs that, they run a business for a few years, they kind of like sell it and move on. We don't, it's hard to, but that's mainly in the US, maybe UK, Europe. We don't have that happen so much in Nigeria. So you find entrepreneurs who kind of like just run businesses forever and, becomes, Ugo Chukwu and Sons or whatever.
Exactly.
They try and hand it over.
That's the succession plan.
Do you understand? So literally, I'm at the point where, I'm building out a management team who actually will then be in place to take over the day-to-day, who pretty much do most of the day-to-day now anyway. So I'm structuring that out as I transition into doing a lot more angel investing, working in the crypto and blockchain space. So I've cut about 5 checks this year already. So I angel invest. Last year I cut about 7 checks. So each year I try to cut between 5 to 10 checks into interesting angel opportunities. I'm taking I have more of a focus on Web3, blockchain, crypto. 2 companies that I've angel invested in are actually part of Y Combinator. One is finished Y Combinator, another one just got into Y Combinator. So Coin Profile is the latest company I invested in about 2 years ago. They got into Y Combinator 22. So in the current cohort, they're a crypto remittance platform. Doing amazing business, doing amazing numbers. And some of the companies I've angel invested in over the years and are bigger than my own personal business. So it's obvious I've taken a shine to that kind of like high risk space. High risk, high reward, because angel investing is high risk. It's not, you make it sounds great, but I can't tell you all the failures I've had.
Once that check goes out,
that's it, right? So there's been a lot of failures, but the way it counts, the winners usually overshadow everything else, right? And that's definitely what's happening.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good place to land it. I wanted to say thank you so much for making all the time of your extremely busy schedule, by the way, and some luck that I had to have this space at this moment. Thank you for sticking to the end of another interesting episode of this. We've not only gotten the experience, but I think you've dropped some amazing gems along the way. Subscribe to the channel. It's Joan_IO. This has been an Afro Laser production. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.